By the end of 2002, Pokemania had officially fizzled out in the West. That's not to say Pokemon became unpopular, just that it didn't have an enormous globe-spanning hype surrounding it anymore. It was just another kids franchise, and it was up to this upcoming set of games and spin-off material, Generation 3, to cement the legacy of the franchise. Was it all just a fad? Or will it remain at least dependable? This question was to be properly answered when the anime got a substantial rebrand, becoming Pokémon Advanced Generation. Unlike with the second generation, where almost everything but the setting was retained from the first, this loose adaptation of Gen 3 had some very blatant cosmetic updates, new clothes, new friends, and way more new Pokémon. It set a standard that the anime still follows religiously, but after getting through those first 5 seasons and immersing myself in that style and those aesthetics that started it all, I was worried that the changes would be distracting. Well, some of them were the right calls, others not so much. Look alive, because once again I'm going over my usual 100 episode limit. This review will cover Season 6 and 7 of the English dub, as well as the Pokémon Chronicles sub-series. I don't do the movies because they vary in their canonicity, but Chronicles is basically Pokemon without Ash, so I'll allow it. Are they good or not? As I mentioned in the last Pokemon video, Gold, Silver and Crystal were meant to be the last games in the series, but they'd proven so popular and the Pokemon world so expansive that there was no excuse to leave it hanging. The following set of games were very transitional in nature. The artwork by Ken Sugimori still had a watercolor feel to it, but much less so than before, and they were the last games the series creator, Satoshi Tajiri, personally oversaw before moving up to an executive role. Plus, they were now on the Game Boy Advance, so a graphical overhaul was to be expected. Ruby and Sapphire were happily wed on November 21st, 2002 in Japan, and March 19th, 2003 in North America, to some pretty good reception and sales. Not as good as Red, Green and Blue, but you don't come to me for video games. What does any of this have to do with the anime? It had loosely followed the first generation for its first season, screwed around in the Orange Islands for the second, before following the second generation for the next 3. The plan was again to send Ash and Pikachu to the new region, but some changes were made in order to keep the audience interested. Johto wasn't a bad arc, but I beg of you, do not play any sort of drinking game while binging it. It was decided to shake up the main cast, and while Team Rocket were initially considered for the chopping block, ultimately, Ash's first traveling companions, Misty and Brock, were let go. Brock came back soon after though. I can see they knew the error of their ways. The new team would start coming together on the day of the game's launch in Japan, and the first couple episodes were previewed early in America on March 15th, 2003. But because the last season ends on a cliffhanger, it's unbelievable how weird and confusing the season premiere is to watch removed from that context. The last episodes of Master Quest didn't air in America until October 2003, mind you, by which point the Game Boy Color had been discontinued. This is the least of the dub's worries, but it's still worth pointing out the context in which these episodes aired. Case in point, Pokémon Chronicles didn't air in the States until 2006. Originally broadcast as Pocket Monsters side stories, some of the Pikachu shorts and the Legend of Thunder miniseries were dubbed a little later than the advanced episodes they aired alongside, but side stories is the best way to describe them. The first 2 essentially show us what Brock and Misty did upon returning to their hometowns. While Brock discovers that his family's fine without him and goes back on the road to Hoenn, Misty becomes the most capable of the Cerulean City gym leaders, but gradually sinks to the side character level of Tracy and Richie. Because none of these episodes have anything to do with Ash and Pikachu, they can all be considered filler episodes. They're only worth watching if you like the featured characters. Even then, some of them were done dirty. Casey outstayed her welcome, Butch and Cassidy were dumbed down just so they could pose less of a threat, and the 3-parter where Meowth chills in Big Town was really boring. I like Meowth well and good, but he's one of those small doses characters. My favourite episodes made for Pokémon Chronicles would be The Search for the Legend, where Richie hangs out with Silver, a mysterious man who has a fascination for Moltres, and may or may not be Ash's dad. Cerulean Blues was the best of the Misty episodes for being the most useful to her arc of wanting to appear strong and useful to her sisters. The show is an exciting one too. My very favourite would be We're No Angels, where Team Rocket lands in a town that unabashedly worships them. It's just a funny idea executed well. When it's done this well, it hardly feels like filler. My least favourites are those darn Electabuzz for just how annoying Casey is in it, getting really bratty around her own baseball idol. The ending turns things around, but what an unlikable episode for the most part. My least favourite is Showdown at the Oak Corral, for having the problem with Butch and Cassidy in spades. If they're not going to act any different from Jesse and James, why not use them? Well, because they're often Hoenn, I guess. After parting ways with Misty and Brock, Ash and Pikachu are unsure over where to go next. They've already competed in 2 regional Pokemon leagues and 2 extras. Where do they go from here? Further than ever before. They see a Ho-Oh flying over to Hoenn, supposedly the same one from the very first episode, and it inspires Ash to start his quest to become a Pokemon Master from the beginning. He leaves nearly all his Pokemon at Professor Oak's lab. It's just him and Pikachu again. Just like it was in Pelatown all those not exactly years ago. This self-imposed challenge to start all over again is something I'm sure the games had a hand in. You could transfer your Gen 1 Pokemon to the Gen 2 games, but you couldn't transfer them from Gen 2 to Gen 3, so for fans of the games, it was also a challenge to have to build your team back up. Things get more familiar before too long. Ash is joined by a girl called May, a brand new Pokemon trainer who secretly doesn't care much for training, but falls in love with Pokemon contests. This I think was also inspired by the games. Pokemon contests were a new mechanic added to those games, and on the surface, I like their approach to how May comes to be a coordinator. It's like when your sister isn't into the same franchise as you, but then discovers something about it that she can enjoy, so it can become a shared interest. Her brother Max soon tags along, fine, and then they catch up with Brock again a while after that. Team assembled, and a new status quo is quickly formed. Ash is getting more into the nitty-gritty of Pokemon training, May participates in contests, Max supplies some stories about Pokemon facts and fandom, and I heard Brock likes Mudkips. I might as well get him out of the way first. While an old reliable presence, I can't really say he was all that essential to the story this time around. They still had some jokes to make out of him flirting with women, but they're the same jokes you've been seeing for 4 seasons at this point. It's good to still have him around, but he tends to offer less than in the original series run. As much as they tell me he's a great cook, I can't taste to verify. Ash's character is continuing to develop from Johto. He's more brash than before, more resistant to advice from others on his training skills, but he's also a little smarter in his battle tactics, so it balances out. I feel like this is a fine enough evolution of the character for the time being, but I am not a fan of his new uniform. It grew on me eventually, but I'll always vastly prefer the first one. Pikachu was given a bit more to do overall than at the end of Johto. It's getting pretty annoying now whenever he's kidnapped by Team Rocket, because I've seen it hundreds of times now, but he's still a cute presence when need be. May was easily the biggest challenge the writers put on themselves for the advanced generation, essentially replacing Misty. What they got right about her was her likability. Although she doesn't like Pokemon at first, you can understand why. She gets into trouble with them a lot, and doesn't have the same sort of courage in battle as other trainers.
Use water gun.
When she finds something to do with Pokemon that better suits her sweet, feminine demeanor, you can feel good for her. However, the writers sometimes got a bit lazy with the jokes that she's the girl of the group. She loves shopping when they get to big cities. This is the part where you laugh, dudes. Max took a while for me to warm up to. The first thing he does is boast to Ash how much smarter he is about Pokemon battle strategies, even though he's too young to be a trainer. There's still a bit of that brattiness as he sticks around, but he's part of more child-oriented stories than the others, like looking up to Pokemon professors and attending schools. He still isn't my favorite character in the world, but I could understand why he was added. Team Rocket, still consisting of Jesse, James, and Meowth, are tasked by Giovanni to create a base of operations in Hoenn, and continue to fail miserably at that and kidnapping Pokemon. They're even more bumbling here than in the original series, and tended to have less personality too. Jesse's vanity isn't as recurring of a character trait, and neither is James's aristocratic background. Meowth continues to be a neat little anti-hero, but they didn't push him as hard in the first few years of the Advanced era. The most he gets is this running gag where he imagines how Giovanni would use all the Pokemon they try to catch, but I ended up skipping them after a while. They're all the same joke. After reaching a dramatic fever pitch at the end of Season 5, 6 went out of its way to scale things back in terms of scope. Sure, we're in a new region with new Pokemon, but it's still the beginning of a new story. It would be foolish to retain the dramatic climactic high of last year. So, it's average Pokemon again, with some cutbacks. For one, the show's sense of Japanese culture was muted to make it more appealing to foreign markets. That's quite a shame, because you get less of a sense of where the show came from. It's a slightly more generic world with less direct, authentic influences. I get why they did this. An early episode featuring a samurai was banned from South Korea, for example, but my inner otaku is starving for cartoon pagodas. The tone of the stories is also lighter overall. Not as much fear or grief, just action-adventure at the very most. I'd argue this makes Pokémon Advanced a good season to jump on with, but Indigo League offers you so much more. To its credit, now that 2 of the main characters are going after badges or ribbons, there's arguably less padding than ever before. Season 6 has Ash compete in 4 gym battles, winning 3 badges, and May compete in her first contest. Then Season 7 has 3 gym battles and 4 contests. If you can get behind both competition styles, the first 2 years of Hoenn will give you a lot to look forward to, though there are still a lot of filler episodes. I'd really advise skipping certain episodes now, unless something important happens or the title, premise, or featured Pokemon seem interesting to you. One positive change is that they strove to give the Pokemon more personality. A lot of earlier Pokemon like Krabby and Heracross weren't much of characters, just glorified pets for Ash. The Trico he gets this season has a distinct attitude, which is a different look from most of his prior team. However, I did warm up to Charizard after a while, so I fear the opposite thing might happen with Trico, that he'll wear out his welcome. Still, it's an effort to keep his team interesting. Most of the rest, like May's Torchic and Wurmple, are there to be cute and colourful, which is all well and good. It's just more nice to see that they're trying to maintain a more complex charm with some of them after so long. Season 6 is the first one to be entirely digitally inked and painted, and they really wanted to show that they had gotten the hang of it. The colours are more vibrant than in the original series, maybe a bit too bright on Pikachu at points. The character designs are still consistent, and the Pokemon still look interesting. People who grew up on the early games and series had a hard time getting used to the designs of some later Pokemon, but I don't see a decline as of Gen 3. Maybe it's just that I didn't grow up in the 90s, but they still look creative to me. The fight scenes are still dynamic and fun. I can't really say much more about them at this point. Just to get this off to a negative start so we can work our way up, Advanced Generation is my least favorite season of the Pokemon anime, from the 7 I've seen so far. The English theme song bites, and I just don't find the journey very interesting at this point. Sure, there are more competitions than in a long time, but now it feels like they're going through the motions. The interest in a brand new region of the world has largely subsided, leaving me with the same show as before, but more dull and more egregious without Who's That Pokemon. I still like plenty of episodes, and I'm sure there are fans who love this season of episodes to death, but it was becoming clear to me as I watched it that I wasn't as invested in the tone of this era of the anime. One of the areas I feel it's lacking is with May's rival, Drew. Compared to Gary, he's similarly brash, but not quite as fun or interesting. I could just be feeling nostalgic for the early seasons, but that isn't how I wanted to feel. It's reassuring that I feel more indifferent to the show 350 episodes in than annoyed. They aren't doing anything seriously wrong. In fact, they're still improving on things in the animation department. Some of the fight scenes have some really striking line art, making them look more stylized. That's a way to break up the monotony, I guess. I haven't got much else to say about Advanced Challenge, other than list off the top standout episodes, which I'm ranking in order with the advanced episodes for now. A Togepi Mirage and The Princess and the Togepi make for a surreal two-parter that's worth mentioning. Misty's brought back, and a Togepi evolves into a Togetic, so that's already incentive enough to watch it, but this whole thing with an unknown kingdom with a mirror castle in the sky just confuses the heck out of me. In a good, weird, mysterious way, that is. You Can Never Tailo reintroduces Brock, what can I say? It's good to see Ash making some progress too. He caught his first Pokemon in Kanto 3 episodes in, and here he catches it in episode 4. It's the thought that counts. Just One of the Geysers was a solid gym battle episode where Ash defeats Brawly, a guy with blue hair, voiced by Jason Griffith, who hands him the Knuckle Badge. I see what they did there, but it was well worth the 11 episode or 2-month build-up. Look how many countries joined the 2003 Lithuanian European referendum in that time. Nuts! A scare to remember is your routine Amnesia episode. Pikachu gets blown away by a Team Rocket contraption and wakes up with no memory of Team Rocket or Ash & Co. So Meowth takes advantage of this, begrudgingly. They took their sweet time to make an episode like this, but I like where they went with it. Who's Flying Now serves as a nice chill build-up to the Fortress City gym battle, most of it being spent at a carnival. I thought I'd seen the last of the old Magikarp salesman, but I have to be honest, he gets funnier every time he appears. A Poké Block Party has plenty of weird points to go around. The gang gets suckered into this strange maze event, and the Ringmaster, the King of Tricks, is a bizarre fellow in every possible way. It's also weird as all get out that they brought Jigglypuff back just for this episode. I was sure they'd left her behind, but it was great to see her come back one more time. Winner by a nose pass is Ash's first gym battle, and presents how much smarter he is as a trainer compared to earlier seasons. His team is really coming together, and while he still makes rash decisions, he manages to turn it around in the end. Sky High Gym Battle is a fun gym battle between Ash and Winona, a flying type trainer. I like the setting of this one, out in the open, bright sunny sky. Great place to attack some birds. A Ruin with a View did a pretty good job of really getting the Hoenn saga going after how routine the first episode was in places. Team Magma makes a memorable first impression, and it was a good call to set a chunk of the episode on a Ruin site to prove that there's even more to learn about the world. I Feel Skitty is cute and funny, just the way I'd want an episode about a cat to be. The focus today is aromatherapy and all the ways it can help the gang's Pokemon heal and hinder Team Rocket's plans. Skitty makes an adorable first impression too, so there's plenty of reason to enjoy this one. Win, Lose or Drew is May's first contest episode and easily the hardest hitting. They did their best to show that this isn't an easy field for newcomers, but also make a happy ending out of May's loss. Sure enough, she wins next time. Spoilers for an 18-year-old anime. A Poached Ego is easily the best episode of the first 2 seasons of Hoenn, having the most turmoil and pathos. Jesse and James have to give up their Arbok and Weezing after having them for the whole show, and while they eventually get a Seviper and Cacnea, it was still kinda sad to see the OGs go. Here's 8 episodes from this era that I don't like. The Garden of Eden is really boring. An episode all about Slackoth and Snorlax is not something I'd consider exciting, and it isn't very funny either. Maybe I'm just not a Snorlax guy. Whiscash and Ash kind of peaks when Ash almost drowns. I don't care for Nero, he's on the annoying end of one-offs, and looks much more like a One Piece character than a Pokemon character. Plus the ending joke with the Whiscash eating the Master Ball is a pretty sour note to end on. This feel of approval has such a dim-witted reason for Pikachu to get captured. I get the joke that Ash can't see through Team Rocket's disguises. It was funny on its own 300 episodes ago. The Team Magma scuffle is alright, but doesn't make up for it. Gonna Rule the School bothers me because it seems like such a missed opportunity. Max goes to a Pokemon school, and besides some bratty kids, this feels much more like his environment than the Road to Hoenn, and I don't think they capitalized on this potential properly. A Core Fish Out of Water has way too much Team Rocket. I know they're main characters, but after a while I just wanted them off screen. They weren't giving me anything. It's a very average episode otherwise. Disaster of Disguise is about this kid who really wants to be a Pokemon trainer, but his mother won't let him. It's the dullest family drama you could think of for this world, even if the follow-up episode smooths out some of the nastier edges. The Bicker the Better was notoriously banned in Ireland for its perceived encouragement of sexism. I don't really think it's that awful, it clearly shows that it's an immature mindset, but holy Arceus, do they go further than they needed to. If I wanted to watch a group of people bickering over nothing, I'll watch a political debate, thank you very much. Love at First Flight is one of my very least favorite episodes of the anime so far. Romeo here is a total buffoon, the jokes with Brock falling in love with Ash in a dress are creepy, and Team Rocket are more intrusive than they need to be. I can respect them breaking up this dreck, but not when they're just as annoying. Gripes aside, I can understand why some people love the Hoenn saga so far, maybe even more than the earlier ones. The cast is big, the Pokémon are still cool, and there's more competitions than ever before. I certainly don't think it's bad, but I still prefer the tone and setting of Kanto and most of Johto. But I totally understand the perks to this era. I'm sorry I couldn't get to Advanced Battle to round up the Hoenn saga. I already had a lot to watch, taking Chronicles into account. I still want to continue on through to the end of Sinnoh, but I need to pace myself. Don't want to get burnt out, you know? Pokémon Advanced and Advanced Challenge aren't super effective, but they hit more than they miss. Goodbye for now.
Don't go anywhere, because we're coming right back. If I have my way, some of us won't be all of us.